We still got a lot.
Yeah, it's a little construction going on today.
All right, if you want to go check with him and see if you can move the guy, there's one that's right behind our wall here.
All right,
I just talked to him and see if he moved down. They got 3 other guys in there. Welcome to the show, everybody. Apologize for a little bit of the background noise we got here. There's a remodel going on behind us, and these guys are jackhammering literally behind the wall we're sitting in front of. So we're trying to deal with that and get that situated right now. Hopefully that won't be going on too much longer. But welcome to episode 8. As you know, we have a very prestige guest with us tonight over here trying to add to the ruckus that is going on here at ICC tonight while we're doing the show. Welcome to the show, Darnell.
Appreciate it, man, as I'm over here hitting ashtrays and everything. But
hey, man, I tried to use that as a mic stand like week 1 or 2.
Really?
And yeah, that magnet let loose on me. I mean, I had mics collapsing around me and everything, man. It was bad. So you imagine if a mic was on there. I mean, we had the whole boom effect going with everything on there. So
no, cool. You know what, man? I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. If anybody can hear me, but before we get started, let me give a shout out to my wife, because I know she's technology not inclined, but I know she's on Facebook or whatever. She's trying to find this. So, sweetheart, take your time. It's coming. I love you, and I just wanted to give her a shout out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Glad to have her on here. Nessa's an awesome person.
She is. That's smart.
I give her all the credit. I mean, I give my wife trash all the time because my wife doesn't have a YouTube account. I'm like, my own wife doesn't follow me on YouTube. That's kind of messed up. I give her a hard time all the time. At least Nessa has a little bit of an excuse, you know. Like this is probably her first time listening to a podcast, so
it probably is. You're right. Yeah, so, it probably is.
You know, at least you go on there. Facebook is actually the easiest one for people to find it on. Although YouTube, if you're having problems and you are on Facebook, or if Facebook decides to crap on us like it did a week or so ago at the end, you can go to YouTube at just YouTube and then put the @ Common Sense the podcast. You should find it right away now. They just released our handle this week. So
there we go. So Nisa, YouTube, and then Common Sense Podcast, sweetheart.
Yep,
okay.
Yep. We're good to go. Well, man, I'm very excited to have you on the show. This is the first one. I'm actually probably more nervous about this show than any show I've done. Even though we go way back. Because, you know, this is the first show where I'm actually talking about what I do for a living and the industry that I'm in. So you're the very first industry guest on here. So,
wow.
You know,
I'm honored.
I felt that was only appropriate, as you were someone that helped me very early in my career and have been kind of a mentor to me and helped me a lot along the way, as you're very involved in the industry and have been for a long time. So I felt it was only appropriate to make sure we got you on here.
I am honored. Okay,
and
cool.
You like bourbon and cigars, so I mean,
there you go. I'm all for it then. I'm in the house.
I figured it wouldn't be too hard of a sell, you know, as long as I bribed him with a little bit of bourbon and, you know, some good cigars, I figured we'd be all right.
No problem at all. And actually, this Zulu is nice. That's real nice.
Yeah,
I like that.
So for all you wondering, as you can see out here, I brought a few little bottles that we could try out tonight that I thought Darnell might like. Darnell is smoking the Zulu. It's one of my favorite go-to sticks that I have up here that you can get here at ICC. And then I am smoking an LFD Andalusian Bull. So throw that out there. As you can see, we've got a little bit of Russell's Reserve tonight out here. That's a single barrel over there, and then we've got a Bottled and Bond Heaven Hill, and we've got a small batch E.H. Taylor. So for those of you that are always interested in what we are drinking and smoking, that's what we have going on tonight.
And the soundtrack is provided by Jackhammer.
Yeah, Jackhammer is your guys' soundtrack for the night.
I mean, it's kind of fitting. You guys are in the industry of construction. So as your producer, I kind of line things up to make you feel more at home.
I appreciate you doing that, Biz, because it's like a running joke we have in the industry. If Darnell and I are trying to walk a job on a property, it never fails that it's landscaping day and somebody is chasing us with a leaf blower.
How true. How true.
That's always what's happening when we're trying to have
that happen?
I can't even count them on if I had my shoes off and my hands. I mean, it's all the time. Like, we just had the landscaping done yesterday. Yeah, well, here they are. This guy forgot to do his leaf blowing, I guess. So, yes, folks, we have a jackhammer, 3 of them actually behind us tonight. So
I tried, but they we do have to be at a certain point before quitting time. So yeah, he looked at me with the jackhammer in a very violent manner.
I know he didn't really like me. He just told me to appease me and get me out of his way, I think.
And he went right back to the same spot
doing it where he is. I mean, he is literally right behind me, folks. Like, it's unbelievable.
Everybody got a job, you know.
I know, but when we have a project that's on a deadline, you can't get nobody there without overtime at 6:15 with a jackhammer. I mean, I have to pay these guys extra to get them to try to do this, but for whatever reason, we got some overachievers because we're doing this show tonight. But we're going to try to just get past that. Hopefully, Biz can work his magic over there and drown out some of this, but I doubt it because these mics, I mean, we're literally 2 feet from the wall, so it is what it is. It is what it is tonight, so hopefully we'll get some reprieve. Hopefully he'll get this section done quickly. Well, without further ado, let's get into some of your background. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, but not everybody on this show is going to know your story. Hopefully we got a lot of our industry people on here tonight.
Okay.
But Kansas City, Missouri guy.
Born and raised. Kansas City, Missouri. Came out of Bishop Hogan High School, just in case if anybody knows anything about Kansas City. But educated in the Midwest, Des Moines, Iowa. I went to Drake University,
Drake, right?
Of all places.
Whoa, what you know about the Drake relays,
boy,
sir?
Please, you don't know nothing about that.
I DJ'd the Drake relays for 10 years straight.
Are you serious?
I'm from Omaha. I'm right around the corner.
The world is too small. Are you serious?
My wife is from Des Moines.
Oh, man.
Sorry, Terry. We'll talk later.
It's all good. I'm just glad he didn't get here to meet Tyre. Now, they'd be doing their Omega stuff. Like, it'd be a party in here already. We ain't even had a drink yet.
Oh, yeah. We gonna talk.
Just in case anybody out there is a Q, Roo, Fall 85 Toyota. But, so educated in Midwest Des Moines, Iowa. Moved from there back to Kansas City. Lived in Ohio for a while, lived in upstate New York. In fact, the reason why I moved to Texas, never forget this, May 5th, 1996, it snowed in Buffalo, New York. And I'm sitting here like, nobody should see snow in the month of May. I will not live here another year. So actually, you know what, interesting, I arrived in Dallas, Texas on Halloween, 1996, and pretty much been here ever since.
Happy anniversary.
That's funny because I moved to Texas in 1996 from Glastonbury, Connecticut.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
And my prior residence before that, I mean, mind you, I was in, when I lived in Kansas, I was in, I think that was first through sixth grade. First through third was Wichita, Kansas. Third through sixth was in Olathe, Kansas. Moving to Glastonbury, Connecticut was quite the shock. I'll never forget this. We moved right at the end of summer, started school, and I think it was late October, early November, I experienced my first nor'easter.
Oh, yes.
And that was a record snowstorm year, and I think they ended up with like 174 inches of snow that year.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time it dumped like 2-3 feet of snow. My dad literally said, "Go shovel the driveway. Do not go back to bed. I have to go to work. You have a delay. You're not going to school for a couple hours."
Right.
I'm like, shovel the driveway with what? We didn't even own a snow shovel.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it doesn't snow like that in Olathe, Kansas. And if it does, it's gone later.
And a broom just will not do.
Yeah, or a dirt shovel. I mean, it wasn't real good. I mean, that's one of the funny stories my dad used to tell because he literally told me, I said, "Well, how much you paying me to do the driveway?" He said, "I'll give you $20 when you get home from school." And I'm like, "Cool, I can go buy like a box of baseball cards with that."
Right.
Well, I walk outside and I see this kid with a ponytail. Guy had like a Trans Am or a Firebird across the street, high school kid. And he's walking behind this machine that is literally throwing snow. I'd never seen this before in my life.
Wow.
It's the first time seeing a snowblower.
Right.
So I walked over to the guy and said, hey, man, you got time to do our driveway? He's like, sure. You know, how much you pay for it? I said, well, what does it cost to get your driveway done? He's like, yeah, give me $10. And I was like, sure. So I went back inside, went back to bed. My old man came down to my room hot. I told you, I was like, hey, your driveway's done, but I need my $20.
There you go.
And he gave me my $20. And I said, and preferably if you got like change for that 20, I don't need to see a 20. And he's like, well, how much was it? I said, well, that's for you and the guy across the street to work out, but I need $20 split up if you don't mind. And yeah, that was my experience with snow. And that's one thing I've said, you know, Texas, I call home now because I've never lived anywhere longer in my life.
Me either, yeah.
And, you know, that's one thing I never have a desire to do again is shovel snow. I mean, I don't mind the winter, but like, I don't want to have to wash my car every week, get the salt and the ice. I mean, man, I'm out on all that. So
I agree.
What did you study at Drake?
Actually, I have a degree in mass communications. Well, actually, it's in journalism and mass communications. My particular area of expertise is, believe it or not, advertising. I've never worked a day in advertising in my life.
I was going to say, because when I saw that, when I was doing some of my research, even as well as I know you, I had no idea that you had a journalism degree.
I have a degree in journalism. Now, I will tell you, it made sense. So I started off as a finance major until I got to math class. And then I got to math class. So, you know, in that, it was like advanced algebra or something. I did okay. I had algebra in high school. I was okay. All right, I got to something past that, and I was like, oh, no, this ain't for me. So I switched from business school into journalism school because I always enjoyed writing. Believe it or not, and you probably don't know this, I used to write poems growing up. I wrote a lot of poetry, yeah. So I said, well, you know what, I always enjoyed that, and that's how I got into journalism. So still today, I love to read. I very seldom write poems anymore. In fact, when I was courting my wife, I used to write letters and poems to her. But that's just between us. Don't tell nobody.
All right, you do realize you just said this on the World Wide Web. I mean, I don't have to tell anybody, for the record. You just put that out there yourself.
However, though, I got into journalism, always loved it. I loved the creative side of advertising, but as I said, just professionally, once I graduated and started getting into the business world, I was more into the retail than anything else.
Okay. Yeah, my father used to write a lot of poetry. And matter of fact, I still have a lot of his books that he wrote in. I like to write, but it's more just me getting stuff out of my head, and I write, regularly for that. That's actually why I started the podcast. One of the reasons was I tried doing a blog for a little while, but to do that consistently and feel like I was putting something good out and not over-analyzing every word I put on paper and editing.
Yeah.
I figured, I was like, man, I'm way better at just give me a microphone,
and
let's sit and talk.
Yeah.
Because I can do that way easier than like over-analyzing myself. I mean, I still say stupid stuff on here and stuff. I'm like, well, maybe that wasn't the best idea, but know, at least it's always just coming out clear, and in my mind, it's like a lot easier to just have that conversation versus trying to put that actually on pen and paper. But I do highly recommend that. Like, that's a habit that a lot of really successful people and a lot of people I talk about on here, they all journal to some degree or write. Like, it's a big part of what they do of staying organized and keeping stuff fresh off their mind, or being able to go to sleep at night, just to take that, download it, pen to paper. Not everything has to be on a keyboard these days, even though most of the new generations, it has to be on a keyboard. And if it's not TikTok or tweet, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Correct.
So how did you jump? Because you've had a long storied career that is still ongoing, not to make it sound like you're done and out, but you've been in the multifamily industry for as long as I've known you, and I know you, that's pretty much been the majority of your career, unless I don't know, there's maybe something before that or anything. But how did you go from your passion of writing and journalism into the multifamily world?
Well, you know what? It was interesting. A friend I had in college, he always wanted to purchase single-family homes and, do some investing and selling and all of that, which, I thought was a good idea. So anyway, long story short, he moved to Atlanta and he went through and took some classes through IRM and he started his career that way. So when I moved specifically to Dallas, that was kind of my game plan. You know what? I want to kind of find out how to manage and purchase and all of those things. But anyway, long story short, once I arrived, when I was in Buffalo, New York, I took a class. In fact, it was interesting because I took a class from Buffalo all the way to NYC, New York, and that was my first chance actually going to New York. So, Midwest kid in the big city, oh man, it was wild. But anyway, so I took an IRM class there, and when I moved to Texas, I contacted IRM and said, hey, I'm trying to find a job. Well, lo and behold, they had, at the time, they still had a newsletter, which was a paper newsletter. This was 1996. Anyway, they sent that out, and John Ridgway with Lincoln, he actually called me up for an interview and went in, interviewed with him. Well, I'm from Kansas City. Turned out he had spent some time there. So he had met Len Dawson, and we're talking about the Chiefs, and we're talking about Len Dawson. This is the only interview. I don't think he asked me anything about my experience. We spent like half an hour to an hour talking about Kansas City, and he said, okay, you know what, give me a day or two, I'm going to call you. I got the job.
That's seriously awesome. So 13 moving to Connecticut, I was out of my element and everything like that. That summer, I was homesick real bad, and my parents decided I was old enough I could fly. They had the little flight programs where they would pretty much escort you to and from the plane in the gate and get you there. I went back to flew home to Kansas to see friends. Uh-huh. I sat next to Len Dawson on the plane. I still have a Kansas City Chiefs hat. Most people don't know that my first true fan love of sports was the Kansas City Chiefs. Cool. Now, I sided a little more with the Cowboys because that was my grandfather's team, and Oklahoma guy. So I was both Chiefs and Cowboys fans. Gotcha. Have been for a long time. But my first jersey was a Steve DeBerg jersey, and I was a big Derek Thomas fan. But Len Dawson was actually the first professional football player I ever met. I flew next to him on the plane. Was an awesome guy. He just recently passed.
Right, sure did.
So yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, so cool. You got interviewed about the Chiefs, and there starts the storied career with Lincoln.
Yeah, it was, and to be honest, John is still like a mentor to me. Although I'll be honest, I haven't called him in a long time, but. Especially after I started, he was my regional manager, and whenever, either a promotion came up or I was curious about, hey, should I take these classes, whoever, he was always like the first phone call to me. But if I'm truly going to talk about mentors, and God rest his soul, but Brad Williams and probably Joyce Eldridge were the two that probably propelled me in this industry. Brad more so because you and I kind of know each other from apartment association. Yep. Brad was the person that really got me into it. And it's funny how it happened because I was in my office late one night and he got a phone call, and he and I at the time office next door to each other.
Okay.
And so it was common, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., he and I still in the office. So he gets a phone call from, I think, Marlene Walker, and she was like, I need somebody, for Apartment Association Tarrant County. Who you got? And so I guess he thought about it, and he said, you know what? Darnell Harris. He's smart. He dresses well, and he won't embarrass you. And I will never forget that.
That's
I'm
pretty
like,
true.
Out of all the things I'm hoping somebody could say about me. Now, the smart part, I'll take that. Yeah, okay, I like being smart. But I dress well and will not embarrass you. That always got me. I was like, Brad, you couldn't think of anything else? But no.
You are always dressed to the tens. I mean, you always got that dapper thing going on, like 24/7. I mean, I almost pulled out one of my brims just to do the show, but I was like, how is Darnell going to come dressed to the show? Because I'm the worst about that. I mean, I am a jeans and t-shirt type guy. I mean, I like getting dressed up, but for my industry, on my side of the fence, you know, if I show up dressed like Darnell, people are going to think like they're paying this guy too much. Why is our contractor showing up here dressed to the tins? You know, I mean, I have to think about that even with what I drive. I mean, you know, maybe we should, you know, I think that's a good little transition there. Maybe we should talk about that. Maybe we should tell them the story about how you and I met. Because, I mean, that goes back about 12 years.
It does. And you know what? I hate to tell you this, but I have actually forgotten. But I know it was at an industry event. So you tell this story.
Yeah, I have no problem doing this. So first and foremost, when I started at Element, I was just one of my boss's estimators. Okay. And, you know, I had to transition into sales, which meant I had to get X amount of clients to, you know, move up into sales before I could let go of the estimator and train somebody to take over the estimating and I could start selling.
Right.
So he came to me one day, and this is a powerful thing that I've learned. And like even my wife knows, like, don't issue a challenge to me, like, because, like, You tell me I can't do something, and I'm going to jump all over that.
Right.
Like,
okay.
I'm either all in or I'm all out. There's no in between with me on stuff. So he came to me and he said, like, hey, so all the guys that sell for Element, you know, every guy, you got to have one or two really big companies, and then you got to have a handful of the smaller management companies, some direct relationship with owners, stuff like that. He's like, owner side's going to be harder. Right. You know, management side, they kind of your liaison. Right. You know, so who's going to be your number one management company? Well, at the time, you know, being 27, when I switched into the multifamily industry, the only name I knew was Lincoln. That's the only place I'd ever had an apartment was with a Lincoln apartment and whatnot. And I knew Lincoln was a big name. So, you know, like I still didn't know much. And, you know, the other guys had some of the big guys under their belt. So it wasn't like I'd go steal those guys. You know, I had to get my own. Well, I told him, I said, I'm going to get Lincoln. He laughed at me. He literally laughed at me. And he said, well, there's this guy at Lincoln named Ken Schwartz. God rest his soul. Right. We might breach on that a little more later. But he said, man, I worked at Penco before here in this company. I always try to get him to Lincoln, and that man ain't having it. He's got his guys. You can waste all the time you want trying to get Lincoln, but I would suggest you pick another client or some others to go after. I said, all right, I got you. So I was doing everything I can. I had met Megan McCaden, you know, another great industry legend that passed. And Megan really helped me get in with some of the associations and taught me, you know, hey, this is what you got to do. You got to be a part of these things. These people got to get to know you. You need to become friends with them. They got to know that you're not going anywhere, because people will come in and out of this industry, but once you're really in the industry, you ain't leaving the industry. You might bounce around in the industry, possibly, but you'll be in multifamily some way, because once you get in, it's family. So
that's true. It's actually like the mafia, and you're right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I started doing. I was going to every committee thing I could get myself involved in. And at the time, I think you were either the upcoming president or you were the president of one of the associations. Okay. So I started talking you up, and I mean, I know I had to bother the hell out of this man. I mean, like, every chance I could get to corner him, I was over there. Darnell, what's going on? Tell me something new. What do I need to be a part of? How do I? You pulled me aside and you're like, listen, you've been asking me for a year or two now, and I finally talked the man that you need to talk to into coming to what we call the business exchange. Go grab him 2 Coors Light and sit down in front of him, and that's your shot, man. Like, that's all I can do to help you for right now. Like, that's who you got to talk to. So he sent me over to Ken Schwartz. And, man, you talk about someone that was not happy to be where he was. I don't know what you had to do to get him to go to that and sit there, but that had to cost you.
No, you know what? I will tell you that. Now that is an interesting story because anybody that knows Ken, he's actually an old Army guy, and Ken is out of Pennsylvania. So Ken is straight to the point. You know, now to be honest, you can joke and have fun, but not at work. Ken is serious about his work. So it's interesting you bring that up. That was the only time I got him to come to a business exchange. That was the only time.
It's the only time I ever saw him at any event like that.
Now, here's the interesting thing. In order to get him there, I had to promise him that he would never be without a beer. Okay?
So that's where you told me to make sure I brought
That's why I told you. So it's very interesting you followed my instructions. Now, I'm going to tell you, if I told you that, I had to like you because I gave you the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
I did. I truly did. Now, and it's interesting because after that, I know Ken. What Ken would do is if you were a new vendor, he would give you something small at first because Ken's whole thing was, can I trust you and do you follow directions? Yeah. So I know just over the years, you ended up getting a lot of LPC business. That means Ken actually trusted you. So it turned out good.
I mean, I still remember exactly what he said to me. I gave him my little sales pitch, and he said, you know, the only thing you said that I really can stand by is that your boss worked at Penco. I did some work with Penco, and I like those Penco guys. I have my 3 guys that I use, but when one of them mess up,
and that's true,
and you get the opportunity, I'm gonna give you something small, and we'll see how you do.
That's good.
And he did, and he honored his word. And actually, it's funny. The same day, through an odd acquaintance, Sheila Palmer called me and Ken Shorts called me in the same day.
Wow.
And I met with Sheila Palmer actually first, and it was to do interior turns, which we didn't really do.
Yeah.
You know, we try to stay away from that because it's not our forte.
Right.
I mean, we'll do it if it works out right. That game's kind of changed for us. But at the time, I was like, whatever I got to do, you know, like, sure. And that next morning, I had a meeting with Ken because the guys on the same property, ironically, had messed up on the exterior rehab. Oh. And he wanted me out there to see if I could come and make it work for him. And we ended up meeting him. I'll never forget, you know, he told me, you know, one of the things I loved about Ken, and I wish there were more people like that in our industry, the greatest thing about Ken was everything was black and white. There was no gray area. And Ken told me, if I ever tell you to do something and it's wrong, I'll fall on that sword. Now, if some other manager, maintenance guy, or whomever tells you to do something different than what I told you, and you do it without running by me first, or you go renegade and try to be a hero and just do something other than what I told you, you're eating the crow and you're falling on the sword.
And that's Ken. Yeah.
And he stuck by that till the day he retired. And he actually was madder than hell at me when I got my first big job with Lincoln. Because you know what? It happened when he was on vacation.
Oh, wow.
So he had been giving me a couple of little things. I happened to know he was on vacation, and I had been getting to know Jay Parmalee, you know, better.
All right.
Well, a fire broke out at the time, literally at one of y'all's properties. It was like 2 miles from our office.
Yeah.
And it was one of Ken's properties.
Okay.
I called Jay and said, hey, I know Ken's out of town. This is 2 miles from my office. I have stuff in the warehouse. I can have guys on site in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
He said, all right, I'm calling off the dogs. This is yours. You better not let me down here. Like, you got to roll with this because Ken's out of town, and it's you, me, and Lenny that are going to ride or die on this.
Right.
And that's where it all started. And I remember when he called me coming back, and me and my boss were coming back from like San Antonio from one of our TAAs.
Uh-huh.
And I had a conversation with Ken. My boss actually chewed me out after I hung up the phone for not having any manners and not calling him sir. And I said, you know what? You come walk this fire with us when we get back because we got to meet him next Monday. You call him sir. And in typical Ken fashion, for those of you who don't know, unless you outrank that man in the military, you do not call him sir.
No, that ain't his thing at all.
And he would dress you down if you called him sir. So, my boss is like 6'5", 260, 270. I mean, he's a big dude. John's a big guy.
Yeah, John's a big guy.
And John comes up and calls him sir, man. And I'll never forget, man. I just sat back and started laughing. I was about to die. And
as I am now. Yeah.
Ken stopped dead in his tracks, walked into this building, and turned around, got right up to him, and said, "Were you in the military?" "No, sir." "Don't call me sir." No. And I mean, I was dying laughing. I was like, he got a little ahead of us, and I was like, still thinking, hey, you want to try your manners out again?
No, that ain't Ken at all. You're right.
Well, that's good stuff right there. So, you did that for me, and I'll forever be grateful for you for helping me with that. And I mean, that's just one of the many things you've done to help me in my career, and the things you've taught me and lessons and knowledge you've shared with me. What's something for, because you're still on the owner management side.
Right.
And what's something you would say to, maybe some of these other sales guys that work for a vendor or a contractor, that's advice you would give them in today's market, in today's world, when trying to, further their career with any client?
Well, no, you know what? Two things, probably, and I think I've said this my whole career, but our business is based on relationships and partnerships. Specifically, and I'm gonna start with partnerships, but as our industry goes, meaning as occupancy goes up, you guys get more and more work. When our industry is bad, when occupancy goes down and we're overbuilt, our phone calls kind of stop to the vendors. So, it truly is a partnership. You got to be able to ride those cycles. Exactly. I mean, we are hand in hand, so it is a partnership. But the other thing about relationship and talking about Ken, this kind of fits in. Everybody kind of deals with those they like and they trust. Just like for years and years, I've called you about large stuff, small stuff. I've even
I got a question. I've never seen this, man. That's one that blows my mind. Darnell, hey man, what do you know about this? And I'm like, wow, like for once I get to share some knowledge.
Yeah, and so primarily I call you primarily because of a relationship
we have.
But that's our whole business, and that's why ever since I got into the apartment association, be it Tarrant County, Dallas, NAA, TAA, whoever, I've always encouraged vendors to be active because you're around the people that you need to call you. Number one, get to know them, talk to them,
be a part of the associations and stuff, and get to know those people.
And the other part of that is, you always support those who actually support you. So, not long ago, I called you up. I'm with the new company. Shout out to Palladium USA, Palladium Management Group.
Yes.
But I called you to sponsor. We were having some training. Now, at the time, I don't think Palladium had ever called you for anything, but you actually stepped up and sponsored. Well, that's a relationship and that's a partnership, because I guarantee you over time something is going to come out of that.
Right.
So, it's always about those relationships that you start. It doesn't have to be financial. It could be, almost anything, having a conversation, having a drink, whoever, but if you're a salesperson, you have to be outgoing. You have to put yourself out there.
And that's my advice. Like, and the lesson I learned from that and the things you taught me was find a way to add value. Add value doesn't mean, like you said, you don't have to buy your way in. You don't have to, you don't have to have money, to make money. I hate that saying, like, that you have to have money to make money. Because, back then I didn't have any marketing money. I had no marketing budget. Like I got to go to the events that my company did and events that the industry that we were a part of, AATCA, GD, stuff like that, trade shows. But if you're just looking for that sell, I think that's the biggest mistake that a lot of young sales guys make.
Oh, I totally agree.
Sales guys or women's, don't go in with your pitch. Tell them about you. Find out about them. That's why the Business Exchange is like my favorite event, because it's a reverse trade show. You guys are set there and held captive, and we get to come up and talk to you. You don't have to go up there and try to sell them or ask them what work you can do for them or what you can do for them. That's my biggest thing I try to avoid.
Yeah.
I ask them, is there something you need? Is there a need of yours that I could help you with? Even if it's not something we do, maybe I know somebody that could help you solve a problem. You know, like I just did one at the last one where the manager and the regional had no idea they got hit up with the ownership lenders wanting them to go in and do all the high water efficiency stuff on the apartments. They'd never been asked to do that.
Right.
She didn't even know what that meant to like make the whole place water efficient. I was like, okay, I got you. We have a plumber. We can do that for you. I'll get you a bid on that. And I expected like, how far do you want to take this? But again, how can you add value? Like you can participate and not add any value. Like you can go show up and, just show up and think that that's enough. No, you need to go forge relationships and partnerships with these people. And the only way you're going to do that is to become their friend and not just treat them like a client. Like if you treat them like a client and all you're asking for is them to open up the checkbook, you're not going to get anywhere. That's a long, hard road. Some people never get past that. Some people eventually get the idea that, you got to go build relationships with these people. Because in our industry, there ain't any project that goes completely as planned. There's always going to be problems, and it's how you deal with those problems and how you work past that with them and how you communicate that. Because, you and I have been in some dog fights. In 12 years, we've gone through the nitty gritty, and it's funny, it's not always the big jobs either that gets you in hot water. Yeah. Sometimes it's that little pain in the ass job that nobody wants to do.
Including us,
like neither side of us wants to be dealing with whatever this is, but we're doing it because both of us have somebody to answer to. Like, I think that's where a lot of people get the relationship between the contractor and owner manager messed up too. And it can be on both sides of that fence is really we're both working for the same person.
Right.
We're a team. Right. We are working for that owner or ownership group.
Right.
So if I do something wrong or I look bad, it makes you look bad.
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
So either one of us could technically throw the other one under the bus or make the other one look bad. Or we could both work together and make each other come out, even in a bad situation, still, preserving that integrity and making both of us look good and doing our job and what's expected of both of us.
Very true. And I'll tell you something else about sales, because I tell leasing consultants this all the time. And the more I work actually in this industry and I buy anything, it's more and more true. Nobody buys a product. Seriously. If somebody is looking for an apartment, everybody has the same box. If I'm in an A-grade apartment, I want, and I'm in downtown Dallas, well, the high-rise here and the high-rise across the street, if you go inside, they got the same thing. It may be a different square footage, but the box is the same.
Yeah.
People buy personalities. Honestly. People buy personalities. So if you're somebody I connect with, I want to deal with, if you're somebody I want to be around, people will tend to buy from you. I have seen, anywhere from managers to regionals to executives, I have seen all of them buy terrible products, but they bought them from people they like to be around. Honestly, so, anybody who's in sales, if you have a personality that people can connect with and they feel like they can trust you, they will buy your product. If you're the quietest person and your only answer to questions is yes and no, you probably are not going to sell very much.
You're not going to sell very much.
But honestly, people buy personalities. They really do.
Okay. I think that's a good transition to something I wanted to bring up with you, because this is something I've struggled with. I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, even, the last time you and I spent some time together. And I'll be interested to see what advice you have on this and what direction you'll go with this. But managing your time, you're not only, you got friends, you got family. Mm-hmm. I know you're very connected with your family. Uh-huh. You got your job. At times you were not only doing that, you were also head of all these boards, president of this and that, all things that take up a tremendous amount of time, especially what bleeds into your family time. Because, to me, I always put, my family comes first.
Right.
And then, then work and, on and on and on. But, you got to have your priorities right. But something I always struggle with, and I still do, and I have to find ways to try to do this, but I'm curious as to maybe strategies you have or advice you have on this to do this successfully and be a part of all these things to be able to make it. How do you do the work balancing? Like, how do you look at that? How do you manage time? Because like that's your most important asset is your time, right. And that's really what the people want. Because if you're giving them your time, you're giving them attention, and you're being personable,
right?
And that's because they want to spend time with you,
right?
And if you're doing that or you're not doing that, you can see, and I can see with every client I've had. It goes through waves and cycles, and it's like sometimes you're more connected, right. Sometimes you're not.
Right.
What's your advice on balancing that kind of stuff? Because if you're a little withdrawn at times, that hurts. And,
right.
You're going to feel that, especially in the sales world. But, I mean, you're somebody that balances a lot of things. And I'm looking at that as like me trying to do my job, keep all my different clients happy, attend all these, PCS meetings and board things, and be at the trade shows, be at stuff that all takes time, outside of work. It's not just your 8 to 5, because, one of the biggest things I see that like people that come into sales, we have some examples of that too, where guys come out from the construction side want to get sales, and they're sales is just entertaining. You guys go golfing all the time. You take clients to do all the cool stuff. They don't see everything that goes in before and after 8 to 5 that allows you to do those things. But it's one of the hardest things, probably the biggest thing I struggle with is allocating my time and still having time for all the things that I want to do, whether it's my podcast or everything else. Like what is your outlook on that? What's your advice, or how do you deal with that?
Okay, that's
a loaded question, I know.
Oh my God, it is. And I tell you what, I'm going to try to keep my answers succinct, but there's so many ways I can answer that. But I'm going to tell you, when you started the question, my first answer is I have a wife who understands that I'm juggling a lot of balls. And I will tell you, just as a partner, as a spouse, she supports everything I do. Now, and in all honesty, wow, that's getting louder. So, in all honesty, she's not trying to be a part of the apartment association, and she ain't in a sorority, and she ain't in this and that, and I am. However, she actually supports that. So, having that support at home, I will tell you, first and foremost, is a huge thing, because, when I come home, she's not complaining about, oh, well, you weren't here, you weren't there. She supported me in every endeavor. And, I'll tell her, ask her, hey, I'm about to do this with the apartment association, or I'm going to do this. Is that okay? Hey, yeah, fine, go and do it. So having that support first and foremost is probably number one. Number two, because in life, I've gone through different stages. I've gone through stages where, I would work 14 to 16 hours a day. And then I've gone through stages where, I would try to put in my 8 to 10 hours a day and go home. But to me, the important thing in all of that for everybody is take some personal time. And to be honest, that isn't something I've always done. But in that whole 24 hours, they say you need 8 hours of sleep, at least of rest. You need 8 hours of just your own time, be that with your family, your kids, whoever, and you need 8 hours of work. In today's society, nobody has that schedule.
No.
Nobody, okay? No. Some people are taking that 8 hours of your own family time or whoever, and that 8 hours of work and putting them all together for work, or you put the majority of it into your family. And to be honest, I mean, the world has changed so much, just like, at the point that we didn't have pagers or cell phones, if somebody called your office, they had to hold off until tomorrow to get a hold of you. Now, they expect to get a hold of you right now, and that is the expectation. So, time frames are a lot shorter, but here's what I would tell anybody. You know what? In your 24-hour span, the most important thing is your sleep. Because if you don't have the sleep, you can't do anything else. Get your, and for everybody it changes. I've worked for people that could sleep 3 and 4 hours, and I always, wished I could, but I'm not that guy. I need my
You
8.
and me both. My wife's the same way. My wife is a 3 to 5 hours a night. If I don't get 7 hours, I'm not a fun person to be around.
Yeah, I can't. So, you know what? Out of my 24 hours, I need my 8 hours of sleep. But, and I would say probably the least amount I give to work is going to be 8 hours. That's just something I'm accustomed to. So I'm probably somewhere between 8 to 12 hours a day, depending on what's going on. But the other thing, and
so that leaves you with about 4 hours of Darnell time.
True, and to be honest, the reason why I said my wife first is because just from going through some personal issues, right now I'm on this kick where I'm trying to exercise. So every day I try to do some personal reading, I do exercise, and then I do like a personal devotion in the morning. So those are things that every day I do, because things that are important to me has always been God, family, and after that is everything else. So my morning time is about God, it's about family, and then I go off to work and do everything. So now I'm starting to exercise. So I give myself at least 3 to 4 times a week, I spend an hour exercising. So I brought her up because she supports all of that.
Right.
And it will be hard to be with a partner, a spouse, whoever it is, that does not support your own personal goals.
That's very, very true. I mean, I'm fortunate as well to have a wife that supports everything that I do. So, you know, I mean, it's like this. I mean, I now added a podcast that every Tuesday I'm gone. And I mean, you know, from 4:30 to, you know, 9:30 at night, I'm doing this. And, you know, then all the prep before and after that goes into that and putting this out there. But, you know, I think what you said is point on. I mean, like, you got to schedule those times and those things in the order that they're important to you. And I mean, it's hard. I mean, like, I'll openly admit, like, it's probably as organized as I am, as OCD as I am about this stuff.
Yeah.
I still find that, you know, I got caught up in XYZ. I didn't devote enough time to this. Like, I got so caught up in just trying to meet all the demands on me at work that I didn't put enough personal time in, you know, and that's probably my biggest struggle. You know what? And I mean,
and that's common.
As soon as it starts happening, I mean, like, I can almost instantly guarantee, luckily I have enough people around me that are good enough friends that'll say, hey man, like, you know, like, I feel like I'm just, you know, like, you're just taking orders now. Like, you know, you're just an order taker, you know, like, we haven't seen you out on the property, or I haven't seen you at an event in, you know, XYZ time. And you start forgetting, like, man, yeah, that's all the stuff I did to put into where I am now. And you're like, man, all right, I gotta refocus a little bit, because I got to make more time for that. And, you know, because it is. I mean, it's literally the nuts and bolts behind everything in your career. It's how much time do you want to give these people, and how much time, you know, do you spend building those relationships? Because like we started off with, it is the relationship.
It is truly.
And I mean, like, and it's hard to keep that always in focus. And, you know, like, you know, to stay on top of that, because everybody gets pulled in a million different directions, whether it is your family or, you know, your hobbies, or, you know, whatever else it is, it's a hard thing to do.
And actually, to be honest, even if you have priorities, understand that everybody else in your life does not have the same priorities. You know, so the job is going to infringe upon the personal time sometime. The family is going to infringe upon the job sometimes, you know, but you're the person that actually says, hey, I can't, I got to stop here. I can give you an hour, and I can't. And I'll be honest, probably for everybody, that's the hard thing to do. You know, it's hard to do the job, because they're paying you that hey, I can stay till 6, I can't till 8, or you tell the wife, well, you know what, I can't be there, I got an obligation. But, you know, you have to be the person to actually draw the line of what it is you can and can't do. And for most people, that's hard to do. But sometimes you got to say no. And sometimes
saying, I can't take this job on right now, I've got too much on my plate. You know, I got heavily criticized for that early on in my sales career, but, you know, I've told other sales guys, and I've told my bosses, you know, at times, like, here's all the information. If you've got time and you can give them the amount of time they need to this and to deal with this, here's all the stuff you need.
There you go.
The relationship's here, but, you know, you can't always do that. You got to pick and choose sometimes, and, you know, everybody's emergency is their emergency right then and there.
Exactly.
You know, like, it's their number one priority. It might not be yours, and you might already be putting out 3 fires, but you got to either find time for that 4th fire or find a way to perform triage and still help them with that fire to where they don't feel like you're just not paying them the attention, you know, and dealing with that.
True that.
So you touched on mentors, and we've talked about this a little bit, and I think that's important. I think everybody needs some good mentors in their life. Who have been, I mean, I know you mentioned Brad. I forget the other one you said.
Joyce Eldridge.
Maybe not in your career. Who are some other big mentors? You know, like I know just from knowing you, your brother was a big mentor person in your life. Who are some of the other mentors that you like really look up to?
Okay. Well, you know what? Other than Brad and Joyce, I'm gonna say, and you actually know her. You mentioned her earlier, Sheila Palmer. Sheila Palmer is the sister that I was not born with. Me and Sheila can fight like cats and dogs, and we honestly have. But I love her to death. And to be honest, I love her because I know her heart. Yeah. Her heart is always to help a person, to build them up. But I say that because right now I am the director of compliance for Palladium. Well, I learned compliance from Sheila. Sheila basically developed LPC's compliance program, platform, and department. So, you know, I have to thank her because I wouldn't be, you know, where I am without Sheila Palmer. Yeah. So she was a big influence in my life. And it was interesting because when that first happened, I wasn't aware of it, but as life has actually gone on, I mean, I owe a lot to her. As far as my development in the industry, Joyce Eldridge and Brad Williams, simply because they allowed me to expand, and wherever I wanted to be educated or whatever I wanted to do, I mean, they always supported that. Also for mentors, I would have to add Scott Wilder and Fred Chaney. Although I never directly worked for them, they have always supported, you know, whatever I was doing in the industry. So, you know, for those things, and especially after you look back on a career of 20 plus years, you kind of see more vividly and clearly who actually was there to help you, support you, and whoever. So, I mean, especially with Lincoln, which probably, even though I'm not employed there, I always somehow be tied to Lincoln.
I mean, you had a long career with Lincoln.
I did, and actually, to be honest, I still love them, support them. I don't have any bad feelings against LPC at all. But you know, just outside of there, obviously, I would go to my 2 older brothers. So I'm actually the youngest of 3. Which I'm not sure if I ever told you. I probably have. But my 2 older brothers have now passed away. And it's interesting. I only bring that up because as the youngest, you never imagined that you would somehow become the patriarch of the family. Yeah. Well, somehow I am now the patriarch of the family. So that was, you know, an expectation I never had. I just thought my brothers would always be around. But my brothers were huge influences because my father passed when I was 3 years old. So as far as kind of that older man, you know, I always had them. My mom obviously was an influence, but you know, for me, it's interesting because growing up without a father, kind of what I did was I took bits and pieces from men that I knew because I didn't have that constant man always necessarily there. I'm kind of a microcosm of different men that I've known in my life.
Well, you know, I want to say this too. I don't think it just has to be men. And one of my favorite posts you ever posted, I don't remember how long ago this was, but it's always stuck with me. And even though, because I lost my father when I was 24.
You told me that.
And, you know, and I have a younger brother and I have an older half brother that's like 11 years older than me that I just met like about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, my younger brothers, we're 2.5 years apart. But when my dad passed, it was a hard balance to take on different roles. You know, at times, do I need to be brother right now? Yeah. Or do I need to give some kind of like fatherly advice? Even though I'm like 24 years old. Yeah. Trying to figure out, you know, and I don't have kids either. So like that makes it even harder, I think. But, you know, tell a 21-year-old advice like a father, and you're 24 and you're his big brother. I mean, man, that's put me in some rough spots at times. Right. I mean, luckily we have a wonderful relationship, and I love my little brother to death. I mean, both my brothers, but my little brother, you know, like that put us in some odd situations. But you made a post, and maybe this will lead to further discussion on this, maybe not, but. And I'm gonna mess this up, so maybe you'll have to rephrase me.
Okay.
You made a post about, do you think it takes a woman, or does it take a man to raise a man? As a father of, you know, my children, do you know, something along those lines, man? And like, I was always thinking about it, I was like, wow, man, you know, like I had never really thought about that. And then I remember the story of you telling me that your dad had passed when you were 3, and that, you know, your mom. And I know how close you are with, you know, even your extended family. I mean, you're always doing stuff and posting stuff with your family. So, like, what does that mean? I mean, what does that post mean to you? Maybe there's a mentor or something else other than just your mom. Maybe it's just your mom that you want to talk about that, like, because that rang something with me when you said that, because I was just like, man, that's so true. And I mean, like, you hear all these people that, you know, I don't want to call it an excuse, but maybe your dad wasn't around, you know, or whatever. You know, my dad traveled Monday through Friday, but was always home Friday through Sunday on the weekends when I was younger. He was still a very big part of my life, one of my best friends.
Yeah.
But I don't think you always have to have that. And, you know, my mom probably deserves more credit than anybody, because she was the one, you know, taking us to baseball games, soccer games, football games, basketball games, me and my brother, and making all that work. So what does that mean to you, or what inspired you to put that out there? Because I saw too, I remember the post, like you had a ton of comments on that.
Yes, I did on that.
People went off on that. Like, I mean, that rang a bell with, you know, not just me, obviously, like a lot of people when you said that.
Well, I'm going to tell you, okay, so to preface this, I grew up, obviously, under a single mom, and it was 3 of us, okay? Mm-hmm. The post was, in essence, asking, does it take a man to raise a boy from boyhood to a man, or is that something a woman can do? That's always been a controversial question. Now, the controversy, and I would just state kind of why I was asking the question. Even growing up under a woman when I was young, I always said it takes a man to raise a boy. A boy can't be a man until he's held one's hand, meaning you've got to have a man in your life in order to teach you how to be a man. Okay. Now, in my 50s, I know the ignorance of that statement, because in making that statement in my youth, I was denying the influence my mother had on me. Because seriously, okay, up until 3 years, I had a father, which I have very few memories or anything of my head of me and my father, because I was only 3. So, you know, after that, everything was under my mom. Well, you know, my mom grew up in Arkansas, grew up in cotton fields, so I mean, she wasn't easy. We never lacked for whooping or instruction, you know, or anything.
You got the guidance.
She raised 3 boys to be men, and you know, I mean, for I guess all intents and purposes, we were. So I was asking the question because you always hear about, especially in the African American community, and to be honest, it's in every community, so it really ain't just an African American thing. But you always hear about single mothers, and you know, they have kids, and so the question often becomes, well, you know, you got a 35-year-old son sleeping on the couch, and you know, he sometimes got a job and don't. I mean, is that a systemic thing? Is that of race, or is it anything else? And so the question became, okay, can a single mom raise a boy to be a man? Here's what I would tell you. Obviously, in my experience, yes. Does a boy need a male influence to be a man? I would even say yes. However, a woman can raise a boy to be a man. Now, is he going to be 100% complete? No, because he's going to have questions that she cannot answer. And believe me, it even happened to me. I had older brothers, or I had men that I trusted, and I'll be honest, I didn't have a lot of men I trusted to ask questions, but, you know, it was some. I had uncles and, you know, people in the family. But do I believe it's possible? Yes. Yes, a single mom can raise a boy to be a man. You think
it's the exception, though?
I'm going to tell you, here's what, and it's interesting. Me and my mom and my wife have had this conversation, and you want to talk about some controversy. When a boy gets a wife, that mother, there's a relationship between a mother and her son. You got to understand, okay, that's the first woman you ever loved. That's the first woman you ever dated. That's the first woman you ever had. Now, it's not a romantic love, but it's still a love.
Right.
When she goes from being number one in your life to number two, I don't care who you are. Every mother I know, and I will say this till the day I die, every mother I know has an issue. Okay, and it's not that she doesn't like who you marrying. It ain't even about the wife, and that's where females tend to get confused about my statement. It isn't that the mother does not like the wife. In some cases, they don't.
Yeah.
But my point is this: it's hard for any mother to give up that number one spot in her son's life, and you know why? That's the first man that ever loved her unconditionally from birth.
Yeah.
That's the first man who ever did that. That husband, he had to learn to love you. That son, he loved you unconditionally from birth. All of his life, you were number one up until he met that one. Yeah. Now you got to deal with, I'm not number one no more, I'm number two. That is not an easy transition for most women.
Man, try moving your mother in with your wife.
Boy,
and
look
only
at
lasted 6 months. I have never heard the phrase, there cannot be two queens in the castle, so many times. Yeah, my parents moved in. 6 months later, my parents moved out. Wasn't happening. Oh, they got love for each other. They get along great, but they got along a lot better when they lived in separate addresses. It's just the way it is.
It's true. I can remember when I moved home, it wasn't popular or the cool thing to be in your mid-20s and be at home living with your mom, but you know what? I wasn't in a place where I couldn't be without that. She wasn't in a place where she could take care of the house and everything else completely on her own, from all different walks of life here, that statement still rings so very, very true.
And that's interesting, though. That's
and I know you don't know Biz well either, but I had Biz on the show a couple weeks ago, and man, y'all gonna have to you gotta ask Biz about his grandma. That's all I'm gonna say. When y'all have your story talk later, y'all need to talk about that, because that, man, it blows my mind. Biz pretty much raised by his grandmother.
Oh,
and,
I know you got some stories.
And he'll tell you some stories too. But there's a lot of commonology here between all this, and I think it boils down. A lot of great lessons too, I think.
Well, I hope so. And I'm gonna tell you, it's interesting. I'm on your podcast, because if I ever had to do one, and this ain't a topic I'm gonna get into, but seriously, the topic I want to do a podcast on, it is a passion. I want to do it, but I had to think of who I'd have the conversation with. I want to do a podcast just about people being honest about race. I really do. And I want people to just be totally honest about it. How you feel, what you think. We ain't going to argue. I can handle it. And seriously, so I'm going to trip you out. I would have this podcast. I would seriously want to have a Klansman on there. And just tell me, how did you come to that? How do you feel about it? And I don't want to argue. I just want to have a conversation. Because I just think, not just America, but in the whole world, I think everybody needs to admit some truths that are deep down in their heart that they don't want to tell everybody.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and I'll just tell you this, throughout my life, I've met some people that were just grossly out there prejudiced. But they always knew somebody of the race they couldn't stand that was all right.
Yeah.
And what stands out to me about that is that, but no, you judge that person as a person. You didn't judge them by a color. You judged them by a person.
When you happen say
to connect with them.
Racism is taught. You're not born racist in the world. Or any let's take prejudices, just all that. Your dislike for something else other than maybe you may not like broccoli. Well, you have that choice because you didn't like that taste. But behaviors as a child are mimicked, taught, learned, and then as you get older, they take on their own development. So that would be an interesting conversation because most people that are racist or whatever, they're following the beliefs of something that they were shown or taught, and then, of course, taking it to whatever level that
it had to be taught at a level that it was ingrained in them. Like, exactly. I would be more than happy if I knew enough people to make that podcast happen. I'm totally down there. I mean, I think we would get booted off of every platform in like 5 minutes.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I'm happy to give it a go because I've said the same thing. A lot of people that don't know my background either. You know, I have friends from pretty much every race. My wife is half Middle Eastern. Mm-hmm. And you know how many people that have no idea, they just think my wife is some weird mix or Italian or whatever. Do you know how many jokes or this and that about ragheads and all kinds of other stuff? And I'm not going to say more words because probably the algorithm is going to kick me off just for saying that.
I'm keeping my eye on it.
Yeah, like, I'm not using that derogatory, but I'm just saying, like, even me, since the wars and stuff in the Middle East have broken out, I've had to listen to stuff. And, there's a time, like, I went from growing up in a house when I was first born and little, like my earliest memories, my dad was vice president of the bank, moving up the chain, doing well, bought his house of his dreams that he thought he was going to retire in, whatnot, early 80s. My dad lost his job. My dad had just bought that house. My little brother was born with tumors on his fingers, had to have a bunch of surgeries, all this and that. My dad lost everything and could not sell that house because of the market crash in the 80s.
Yes, right.
So my dad, being a banker, was too prideful to declare bankruptcy, even though that probably would have been his best move.
Right.
Me as an adult looking back on that now, that probably would have been his best move, but he was too prideful to do that and pay the price that would have costed for however long bankruptcy has to do that and to get that fresh start. He just simply wouldn't do it. So my dad, we moved to Wichita, Kansas while my dad took a new job at the RTC and traveled Monday through Friday and was shutting down defunct loans for the FDIC. Right. And I literally lived across the street from Beach Elementary in Wichita, Kansas. And I went from living in this mainly white, middle-class neighborhood in Claremore, Oklahoma, to Wichita, Kansas, pretty much living in the ghetto. I went to a school that was majority African American, small Hispanic population, and some white kids. So, I couldn't walk from the front door of that school, my duplex that we were renting while my dad's still paying for the other house, without getting jumped once, twice a week.
So what was your hood nickname? You move into the hood, you got to get a nickname. I know
he had one.
I know
is he aware of it as a question?
I have so many nicknames. It's not
I was
even
gonna
funny.
say, I know you had one.
G Money. Levi, because in high school I dipped Levi Garrett for a while. You just pick it. I've had several, but even that experience, some of my best friends are African American or of different cultures and stuff like that. That still didn't jade me. And yet I can tell you too, speaking honestly, I remember the first time at a roller skating rink when my dad came to pick me up and saw me kiss a black girl. Lost his mind. Literally. Everything else was cool, but now all of a sudden I crossed some line that was not cool that I had no understanding of. Still to this day, I would love if he was still around to have this conversation with him and, really get his viewpoint on it. But, do I really want to know that viewpoint? But, so to me, racism has to be so deeply ingrained because, I don't really see color or nationality. Matter of fact, I think the more different you are than me, the more I want to get to know you. The more I want to what are you about? What do you know that I don't know?
Right.
And I've seen it happen both ways too. I can tell the story too. I went a few years ago to the Middle East and went to Jordan where my father-in-law is from. And I set all these parameters about what would make me feel comfortable to go to the Middle East. We're talking, this is only 5 years ago. Granted, Jordan is relatively safe, but it's also right next to Syria and stuff. They have refugees coming over. There's still Taliban in certain parts of Jordan and stuff like that. So I can tell you too, I ended up riding in the back seat of a 7 Series BMW going across Jordan with a Hispanic woman, a Jordanian, and then my half white, half Jordanian wife, and me in the back seat. Like, culturally, not a good thing. They asked me if I wanted to drive, but I didn't want to drive in Jordan. Like, how do I know where to go or what to do? Like, I didn't want to do that. And there's guys with machine guns and stuff at every checkpoint. Like, the military is their police. Like, there isn't like a lot of police stuff, you know. So I sat down at tables and they straight up didn't serve me. Like, they came and brought everybody else water, didn't bring me water. I mean, so like, that was my first real understanding of when I would hear, especially some of my African American friends growing up, when I would hear their parents tell stories. Mm-hmm. That was my first really being able to relate to that.
Exactly.
Because like, I thought I kind of understood things, but like, no, I really understand.
Until it happens
like,
to you, yeah.
Because when it happens to you, and same thing, I didn't think I was going to make it out of the airport in Amman. I had screwed up my beard the week or two before we went, and I messed up my mustache area, so I shaved this part off, right? So I had just long beard from here down. I mean, I didn't like shave it off, but it was real light, you know what I mean? So, and then I'm thinking this is the first really long flight I've ever taken. I mean, like, it's like we flew all the way to Paris, had a layover, and then flew the rest of the way to Amman. I mean, I was on a plane for like 20 hours, something crazy like that. So here's my genius self thinking, oh, I should be comfort. So what do I wear? My black Eddie Bauer boots, a pair of Columbia cargo pants, and a Texas Rangers t-shirt with a ball cap on. I mean, that's me. Everybody knows me. I'm a jeans and t-shirt type guy. That's what I wore on the plane. Well, guess who the only people that dress like that in Amman, Jordan are terrorists or military special forces dudes. That's it. We hit that airport. I got through the first checkpoint. When I'm about to go through customs and stuff to get into Jordan, man, I had 2 dudes bum rush me. My father-in-law and wife just walking on like it's no big deal. Here, these guys are yelling at me in Arabic. I have no idea what they're saying, and they're giving me the business. The only things that I got out of it is, what's your rank? What military branch are you in? Why are you here? And as short of that, that's about all the English those guys had. Then their boss guy comes over. At this point, I am yelling at my father-in-law, and like, they finally come back, and he has a talk with them, and they let me go. I'm so nervous by the time we had bought 2 Johnny Walkers for her uncle, you know, to give to him. I'm going down the escalator afterwards, and I'm shaking so bad I dropped it, and like one of the bottles broke. So I had to like go get another bottle of Johnny Walker in the airport.
Okay, so I got a question.
Yeah, go.
How did you feel being that uncomfortable in a country where you felt like you were not wanted?
Man, it was extremely uncomfortable. And you know what? I didn't feel it all the time. There was times that I felt like 100% normal. It was cool. People were cool. People were very welcoming. People wanted to share. So that's kind of more where I go with this is, there are racists and bigots in every single culture there is. And I think the world today wants to put so many people into a box, and everybody has to fit in one box or the other. And I think that's the biggest problem. And there's this other problem of like, you and I can't have anymore a difference of opinion or disagree about something. If we do, it's supposed to get escalated and turn into this big drama and ordeal, whereas, you know, like, let's just say you and I have been friends for 12 years. Mm-hmm. If I knew you and I didn't agree on religion, okay, cool. I'm just not going to bring up religion and talk to you about religion, and we're still friends.
And we're still
cool.
all right.
We're just good. But once one of those disagreements happens in today's society, it's like the fight that can't be one-on-one. It's like the gang fight now. Like, everybody wants to, you know, like, it's 3-on-1 or whatever. You're put into another box, or it's another situation where you no longer can agree to disagree. You're supposed to have some kind of hate for this other person.
Right.
Or you can't just agree to disagree, or be like, okay, I don't agree with you, Darnell. Like, I see it this way. If we can't get past that, then cool, we just won't talk about that anymore. You know, because we have all these other things in common, and we're still been good friends. So, like, why would I still stay on the hop? Like, I don't think people move past these things. They want to have some, quick little hit on, some social injustice, or they want to do anything, and nobody wants to take the step back and truly see something from the other side. 9 times out of 10, like, you can just say that it's like one people like in one ear out the other ear. Oh yeah, man, I hear you. Did you really? Do you really hear me? Like, do you really want to know why I feel this way about whatever said topic is? Right. No, most people just want to go on and say, okay, we disagree, but yet they don't want to just go on. Now they're going to hold that against you, or hold that strong opinion against you, instead of trying to understand why you feel the way you do. Exactly. And there's some things, especially when it comes to race or religion and politics, that like, even though you can't agree, like, you don't really truly want to understand, or people are incapable of having a conversation to the point of, okay, I really truly want to understand why you feel this way, and to have that conversation without it turning extremely hostile.
And that's why I was saying earlier, that if I had a podcast, my dream podcast, that's why I would do it. Now, you and I could very easily have a conversation, and you are correct. Your personality and mine mesh because we like to learn. Yeah. Okay? We're sponges. I want information. Some people, and believe me, it probably ain't even the majority of society, they want to be right.
Yeah.
The way I feel is how I feel. So you know what? As long as you're telling me I'm right, I'm good.
They can't
if you tell me I'm wrong, I cut you off. I'm done.
I'm no longer hearing you.
But I'm going to tell you, the best thing to fight against race that ever happened in the United States was the integration of schools. And it was because innocent children started going to school together. They didn't care anything about you being brown other than what they were taught at home.
Right.
And so at home said, okay, don't be around them, don't play with them. But over time, guess what? They became friends. Then they started to have relationships. Then they started to marry. We would have never had interracial marriages in America if we had have never integrated schools. It would not have happened.
Yeah.
But once they integrated schools, people stopped worrying and seeing color because they saw a white girl, a Hispanic girl, saw a black girl that, you know what, she just cool. I mean, regardless, she cool. I like her, so I'm hang out with her. Yeah. I never forget. In kindergarten, never forget this girl's name. Where she is today, I have no idea. But it was a girl in my kindergarten class. I believe she was Hispanic, if I'm mistaken. But however, she had a black father, but I don't think that was her biological father. Her name was Brenda Harris. Oh, my God. I had the biggest crush on Brenda Harris. I got Brenda Harris's phone number, and, we talk on the phone. But this was the interesting thing. It wasn't even my family who had a problem, which I don't even know if I ever told them or not. But it was everybody in school who kept telling me, you cannot like Brenda Harris. And I'm like, but hold on. She has a black father. Even in my head, the first thing I'm going to is to justify it. Well, if her father's black, it must be okay. You can't, like her. So to me, it's interesting. And as Biz was saying earlier, yes, I think a lot of it is ingrained and you're taught, and, the things that are important to your parents and grandparents, and it comes over. But as you live longer, I'm telling you, if I'm a black man and I've always hated white people or Jewish people or whoever, you want to put in that box. But then I say, but you know what? Garrett's okay. Well, I'm not saying that because you're white. I'm saying that because I've connected. Yeah. My point is that enough people in this world just ain't connected.
Right.
And you know what? You may have the same feelings I have. You may have the same feelings against black people that I have against white people. But until we have that conversation, you may never know. And I ain't even trying to change everybody's mind. Okay, let me just say that ain't my point, necessarily to change everybody's mind. Right. But I want to understand where it came from, because if you understand where your feelings and your emotions, especially about race, came from, then that will open your mind to changing. Because most people, when you just bring it up, ain't going to change their mind. They want to be right. But a lot of them don't know inside their self,
right,
where it came from.
See, that's where I was saying, like, I would love to have that conversation with my father. Do I think my father was a racist? No, I don't think he was a racist. I mean, I had black friends over all the time. Like, my best friend in high school was black. And, like, there was never any issues. He never said anything to me. He had never had a problem with any of that growing up. But that one time that I kissed a black girl at a roller skating rink, I mean,
that was an issue.
He fell apart.
Yeah.
So, like, I would love to understand why that bothered him so much, but yet everything else is cool. Like, where does that come from? Just because that wasn't allowed when you grew up in small town Ohio? Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know the answer to that, because I've had
just got in the car and looked him in his eye and said, "Yes, it does taste like chocolate." And y'all just went and drove home.
He would have lied. Yeah. I mean, I wish I had that kind of intellect back then to say something like that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, it intrigues me. It interests me. And you know what? This is one of the reasons why I wanted to do the podcast and stuff, because I know so many different interesting people from all walks of life and I have these types of conversations with people, especially here at ICC, sitting in the lounge, talking with my boys of all different various backgrounds, races, whatnot. And, like, we talk about things like this all the time. Like, but yet, for some reason, it's only okay to talk about it here. Or, like, you know, like, it's only, but I mean, but that speaks out to what kind of culture and family place the Frakes have created here at ICC, where people actually feel comfortable doing that, because we have a lot of these conversations.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, I think it's good. I mean, I think that's where a lot of this starts, is by having conversation and people learning to be able to understand others, truly see the other point. Not say you are hearing them,
right,
or say you're seeing their point of view, because, like, as many stories as I could tell you about feeling like I was bullied or picked on, whether it was in the uppity white neighborhood I lived in Connecticut, or it was the, you know, all black neighborhood I pretty much lived in Wichita, Kansas, or any other place in between there. Like, I thought I understood racism. Man, I felt racism, you know, in some of those instances.
Right.
I still, the experience in Jordan, the two at the restaurants, like, I'll say, like, my father-in-law, literally, the night dinner that he was at when that happened, like, he literally was like, "Are you not going to serve my son-in-law?" And, like, this is ridiculous. We've been waiting on someone's service. They literally weren't serving the whole table because I was there.
Yeah.
At this, like, high-end restaurant in Amman. And he was like, "No, this is it. I'm done with this shit. This is bullshit. We're leaving." And you know what? Like, I was like, okay, it's a different level of understanding, but how do you, I mean, this would be another part of that conversation. How do you make people experience that? How do you get people to really understand that? Because even if I really wanted to hear you, if I didn't have some of these experiences growing up with, and say I was racist and I was this guy, white guy sitting over here, and, like, maybe I had some deep down whatever, how do you have a conversation, or how do you move conversations to the point that that person hears you or wants to understand you or can understand you to that depth without having experienced that on their own? Well, it's like raising a child. I feel like I go back to this to, like, and I don't have kids, so, like, that's weird to say, but, like, even dealing with my little brother and stuff like that, you know, there was certain things I remember, like, when my dad would tell me this, I'm like, "Man, you're crazy." Yeah, whatever.
I know what you mean.
Like, you know, I had to experience it on my own. He could warn me and tell me all he wanted that I shouldn't do X, Y, Z. But until I did it, you know, touch the hot stove, whatever, and learned on my own that I can do that. So I don't know where racism discussion has to go to have that kind of effect, or how you get that effect of touching the hot stove and being like, okay, now I get it. Now I understand it. Like, because you either have to experience it yourself, or you truly want to hear somebody and you have that kind of connection with that person to really be able to feel them and hear them on that.
Okay. You only could understand it And hear what I'm saying. You only could understand it because you traveled outside the United States. Mm-hmm. If you had never traveled outside the United States, you would never understand somebody telling you the story. You experienced it.
But I thought I did. I can tell you after going to these places I live, I thought I did.
I know. You thought you did.
Thought I did.
But you didn't really experience it until you got over to Jordan and they showed you.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. As an Anglo-Saxon male in the United States, you are the only person who does not have an amendment to the Constitution to give you any rights. The Constitution gave you rights off the bat. You had the right to vote, to own land. You had the right for everything. Me and Biz got ours in the 14th Amendment. All right. Females got theirs 1920, so theirs is one of them other amendments. A white male is the only person in America who, from 1776, you had all your rights. All right. They got to kill the Constitution to take yours. All Congress has to do is have a vote to take ours. My point in that is this: most white men will never understand prejudice because if you stay in the United States, you will never experience it. It just ain't gonna happen. So to you, that's not reality, and it's not reality because it will never happen to you. You will never have that experience.
Right.
Now, because you went to Jordan, you went outside the country, you had it, and it's not good. But you at least know, okay, that must be how I feel. And that's why I asked you earlier, how did that feel?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you, I have been out to lunch. Actually, Sheila and I were out to lunch. And I'm glancing around, and people are staring at us, and it was this older Caucasian man that kept glancing over like, So everybody assumed it was a date. No, it's two colleagues out having lunch. And so I said, Sheila, have you actually, checked out everybody staring at us? She just said, no, it's fine. No, play him off. No, we're fine. She didn't pick up on it at all. She was oblivious to it. Bruh, Biz, I'm feeling these eyes, you know what I'm saying? I'm not comfortable eating because I'm like, why is everybody staring at us? So the point in that is this: if you've never actually experienced it or been in that uncomfortable position, everybody else tripping. Everybody else, you know what? You got something going on. That's all in your head. You tripping. No, I'm
Let me ask you a question. Were they mostly older?
No, it was older. It was primarily, the people who were staying in this particular instance were primarily older, yes.
Older.
Yeah.
And I say that because, like, my kids, I don't think, especially I have a 14 and an 8-year-old. They don't see it that way. They don't experience it that way. But you still have to, and that's one thing. You don't have children, but we do have to have conversations like with my son, where when you go out and walk or ride your bike, you have to understand that you could run into an instance. If you ride your bike in front of somebody's house, get off, park it to tie your shoes, somebody who doesn't like the color of your skin could run out, assault you, confront you, everything like that. We have to teach our children how to handle certain situations that some people only see on the news. My wife, literally, as we speak, that's why you see me texting, she just went to meet my son in Amarillo, Texas. And she's driving back right now by herself. Y'all don't think I'm not on pins and needles over here right now? Not just for her to, hopefully, not to have a car mishap or something, but what if she stops and gets gas at the wrong place, the wrong time? These are things that a lot of people don't have to worry about. But sometimes, and this isn't just black, this can be Latino, Asian, whatever.
Yeah,
but
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
But I will say this. What if you are a white male and you break down or stop in Southside Chicago? Then how uneasy would you feel? Or is there really anything to worry about? You know, I feel uneasy in Southside Chicago, and I used to go there every summer. Didn't matter. So it's different places, spaces.
Yeah, I mean, because people don't pay a lot of attention to their surroundings in general. Like,
correct.
And, you know, my wife jokingly calls me a social chameleon because I can jump into any conversation real easily in places I've never even been, and I will start reflecting your tone, your dialect, or what's something without even knowing it until I'm called out.
And you'll fit in.
Because that was, I think, like self-ingrained defense mechanism from moving so much growing up and constantly having to make new friends, being thrown into all different kind of cultures and environments and all this stuff. And, you know, like, I mean, it's still like, I mean, I'll tell another story. Like, you know, like I there's two things I want to say on this. Like, I think this is where some of the conversation has to start, and I think this is still where the older generations say things to even my generation of, you know, as a white guy, you know, like, and you see this, and the media does such a terrible job, and they still try to create these divides, and like, instead of hearing what either of you saying, because either of you were never slaves, right? Were either of your parents?
My great-great-grandparents.
Okay, so we got to go to great-great-grandparents. Mm-hmm. The media still tries to portray this thing of like, what are you talking about, Darnell? You weren't a slave. Like, why do you even raise that? Slavery was ended, blah, blah, blah. But they don't understand or want to hear any of the other things of why you would still feel uncomfortable. Or I've never heard, like, your conversation about the amendment was something I'd never considered. I mean, and like, that just kind of clarifies those things. And it's like, even with all the racial things that have happened in recent times, people want to go back to like, well, slavery just needs to end. I mean, if slavery was ended, like, you know, you guys just won't let go of that. You guys just won't let go of that. Like that, I've heard that so many times, no matter where I've lived. Yeah. You see it on the media and stuff like that, and like, you're missing the point. Like, it's not still about that. Like, but you just want to stick onto that one thing and base all your opinions and arguments off of that. It's not just about that. I mean, you're sitting here telling a story about how you're worried about your wife driving back from Amarillo in 2022. You're talking about telling your kids about stuff like that. Like, I mean, I don't have kids, but like, I wouldn't have to have that conversation with my kid. If I had a kid, I would not have to. And nobody wants to acknowledge or talk about those things. And I think it's, and how you have that conversation and make them understand that from perspective, and then how you change that and start making change to where that doesn't continue to happen is two different things. But like, to answer your question about the Southside Chicago thing, I can think about as recently as I was 27. So like 27, me and my little brother over the holidays went to visit his best friend who was living in Brooklyn, New York. I've been to New York multiple times. Never stayed in Brooklyn, over in Harlem. We all went out partying. This is like the second or third night there. So I'm 27, my brother's 24, 25. We're not far. We're 2 blocks from Jackie Robinson Park, for anybody that wants a reference. We went out drinking in Manhattan. We got hammered. My brother and his best friend got blackout drunk. Walking back to the subway, because we were going to take the subway. I mean, it was only like 3 stops up. I mean, you could walk it, but it was lightly snowing. It was cold as hell. It was in between Christmas and New Year's, and they got separated and lost. They get in a fight. They get separated. I'm sitting outside the stoop. I find my way back to his apartment. I'm sitting outside on the stoop, and I can't. Their cell phones are dead. Mine's close to dying. Like, we have no communication. It's now like 3:00 in the morning, and we're trying to get there. So, you know, you end up in this place where, long story short, my brother ends up getting lost around Jackie Robinson Park in Harlem, in that area, all night long at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't end up finding him till like 7 in the morning, to the point like I'm calling police stations, hospitals, checking on him. I finally see his buddy walking down with just his pants on, no shirt, walking down the middle of the main road in front of his apartment. He's blackout drunk, still can't really complete a sentence. Get him upstairs, and I'm trying to think about how am I going to tell my mom I lost my little brother in Harlem?
Yeah, exactly.
And I had this little old lady that told me, like, son, at like 3:30 in the morning, she's like, you need to go somewhere. You should not be out here. And I'm like, well, I lost my little brother, and this is the last place I told him I would be, and I'm going to stay here till I find him. And we literally were walking in like a 4-block radius of each other, and we were just crossing there all night long. My brother did the smartest thing I know, like a survival thing, because he knows from like this. He went and bought a pack of menthol cigarettes, bought a 6-pack of beer, and he walked around with it. Someone came up to him or was feeling weird, he offered him a cigarette, offered him a beer. And you know what? I mean, like, I don't know if that was just awareness of his surroundings or whatnot, but like, you know, so yeah, I felt uncomfortable, but yet at the same time, I wasn't so uncomfortable that I wasn't going to like try to deal with the situation I was in. I mean, like, you can be uncomfortable just about anywhere. I mean, but I think a lot of that is situational awareness and people not jumping to conclusions. I mean, but we could have conversations about this for hours. I think we're going to have to do another show at one point, and like, I am totally down to have your podcast and do that. We can set that up. You and I will have further discussion about that over drinks, and let's do it, man. Like, I'm down for that.
Cool.
All right, well, we're hitting our time marker now, unfortunately, and we could do this for hours. So, there's something we do on every show, Darnell.
What's that?
So, my show is called Common Sense, the podcast.
Right.
So, we can talk about whatever, you know. We do imply that you have to have some common sense, but, you know, and that can go a lot of different directions, too. But something we ask every guest, this can be about anything you want to talk about. This could be something you feel like should be common sense. It could be something you feel like you just want to get off your chest, feel like something off a platform you have here to say. But we ask everybody to give us their 2 cents about, you know, whatever it is they want to say.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is common sense ain't common to everybody.
No.
But when I grew up, and as I said earlier, my mother's from small town in Arkansas. She didn't call it common sense. She called it mother wit, okay, which I bet others have probably heard of. And in essence, what mother wit meant was some things are just inherent to a mother or to a female. And so I've always believed, and I believe in it strongly. I believe strongly in female intuition. I really do. If my wife, my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, cousin, niece, any female, you know, in my life tells me I got a feeling about something, I trust that, because seriously, they just have an inherent nature, you know, natural thing, God-given thing that they have that men just do not have. When the hairs stand up on their neck, I pay attention to that. So, you know, to me, that's all a part of common sense. Some things you don't have to believe. Sometimes when they tell you that stove is hot, that damn thing actually hot. You know what? Now, as you said earlier, as a child, yeah, I might put my hand on that stove, but now in my 50s, you know what? If you tell me that stove is hot, I'm probably going to believe you, because I've been burned too many times.
Right. All right, well, I'm going to run this over a couple minutes because I have one other thing I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Because this is a question I wanted to put in here, and I think just knowing you, I feel like you're going to have something really good to say about this, and this is short and sweet, as long as I quit rambling. You have children. We've talked a lot about that tonight in a lot of different scenarios. If you had one piece of advice you could leave your children with right now, it's the last piece of advice you would give them, what would that advice be?
Decide who you are as early as possible in life. Decide what you want to do and go for that as early as possible in life. Don't have a fallback. Don't have a what if. Decide who you are. Decide what you want to do. Spend your time and energy on that.
Hell yeah. I knew that was worth asking you. People, thank you for joining us again. I'm really sorry about all the jackhammering earlier. Hopefully you guys were still able to hear us and got the good content, because there was a lot of really good content early on. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next week. Same time, same place. If you guys are interested, we are starting to look for some show sponsors. You want to sponsor an episode, sponsor your company, however you want to do it. We are doing that. Reach out to me. You can direct message me. We also got our new YouTube handle. You now can easily find us on YouTube. All you have to do is put @Common Sense the podcast, and you should be able to find that a lot easier. We appreciate the subscriptions, the likes, the comments, the feedback. Feel free to message us. If there's other topics you guys want to see us talk about, things you like, didn't like, cool, give it to me. Let me hear it. I want to hear it because we're going to have more guests like this on. We're going to have Darnell back again, hopefully sometime soon. We'll continue these conversations. Hope you guys are enjoying this and getting some knowledge and insightful information out of this and things you can use and apply in your own life. Thank you for joining us. And Darnell, my man, thank you,
Always.
brother.
I appreciate it.
Y'all have a great one.